Greetings, lovers everywhere. I'm E-Train and welcome to E-Train Talks and happy Juneteenth. I am a 12-year-old literacy and reading advocate, and I am beyond excited to speak to our guest today. She is amazing. She is Alliah L. Agostini, and she's the author of the powerful picture book that I have right next to me, The Juneteenth Story, celebrating the end of slavery in the United States. Juneteenth is a federal holiday commemorating the emancipation of enslaved African Americans, especially in Texas. We'll learn more about that later. Now, I don't want to talk too much about the holiday because Alliah will talk a bit about it as well. So let's get a bit to her writing. So Alliah's meaningful book has been recognized across the country for its wonderful message, including an interview that she did on the Today Show. They spotlighted it last year, and that was very, very exciting and cool to watch. Her debut story celebrates the history and meaning behind the holiday in a colorfully illustrated picture book, and a story that I think needs to be in every classroom across the country and all over the world. So I'm so grateful to have the chance to talk with you today, Alliah. It is an honor. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much, E-Train. It's such a pleasure to be here, and your words are so kind. So I have received them all.
Oh, thank you. And before we get into the questions, can you talk a bit about Juneteenth as we're honoring it today on the podcast?
Certainly. So as you've mentioned, Juneteenth, so June 19th, 1865, was the day some of the first enslaved people in Texas learned of their freedom. And this happened when Union General Gordon Granger's troops reached the shores of Galveston, Texas, and they shared the news of the Emancipation Proclamation, which had actually taken effect January 1st of 1863, so 900 days prior to that, which actually effectively freed all enslaved people in the Confederacy. However, the news did not travel very fast. Although it was in Texas, it was kept from a lot of the enslaved people. And even if people did know, enforcement was just very difficult because there were no Union forces there to help protect them and their rights to freedom. So Juneteenth is now an official American holiday, which is simply outstanding. Yes, yes. It was a Texas state holiday starting in 1979, but on June 17th of 2021, our current president, Joseph Biden, signed it into law after, of course, it got a lot of attention in 2020, but there are a number of people who had been pushing to make Juneteenth a holiday for decades before that.
Well, what inspired you to write about it?
Yeah, so I actually grew up celebrating Juneteenth. I'm originally from Buffalo, New York, which I'm sure people know is not in Texas, but Juneteenth has been celebrated in Buffalo since 1976. My grandfather, in fact, was one of the founders of the Juneteenth celebration there. They
Wow.
founded it as a culturally responsive alternative to the country's bicentennial that was being celebrated at that time. Because the reality was, although 1776 marked freedom for America from Britain, it certainly didn't mark freedom for enslaved people there. So when Juneteenth became popular, there were a lot of people looking for information about it. And frankly, a lot of Black people didn't even know about Juneteenth either. And I knew that, this was a kind of a new, almost multi or cross-generational opportunity to tell people about Juneteenth and its history. And honestly, I learned so much about its history as I did the research for it too. So I really wanted to create a resource that children and their families and teachers could kind of use as a guide as they learn something about Juneteenth. And it's great. It's a great resource for kids and also for grown-ups too, because it's kind of like almost it's a lengthier picture book, but it still gives you a lot of the information that you need to really understand the context of the holiday.
And so you mentioned that your grandfather was one of the co-founders of the Juneteenth festival and celebration in Buffalo, New York, which again, not in Texas, as you said.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit more about your family ties to the holiday and about your grandfather's work?
Yeah, certainly. So my grandfather he's 92 years old, and he's still very, very proud of Juneteenth, still a strong advocate, like an unofficial board member, and he's always in communication with the people that are running the festival now. But yeah, so my grandfather, actually both of my grandparents on my maternal side were educators and activists in the city of Buffalo. And, he was part of an organization called Build that wanted to create this culturally relevant alternative to Juneteenth. And so every year was, since I was born, basically we'd go to the Juneteenth celebration. And it was a huge festival. It actually became probably like one of the third largest in the United
Wow.
States, if not the world. So a lot of people don't realize that about our celebration. And I mean, I was there. I was in so many different roles. Like one year, my family had a little stand where I sold pencil
Mhm.
toppers that I made from hand. There were times when I was helping him sell snow cones. I even helped, pretend like the snow cones were so good, so people would come over and buy some. Oh gosh, there's pictures of me scooping ice cream. I think one year when I was 4, actually, there's a picture in the book of a little girl like a purple dress with big hair and a little crown on. And my cousin and I were like the Juneteenth prince and princess, or junior prince and princess. So, I have a lot of strong, memories of the holiday. And it wasn't until, honestly, sometimes you don't understand what you have until you don't. When I left for college when I was 18 years old, and I look for Juneteenth celebrations in the places where I was interning over the summer, I couldn't find them oftentimes. And I didn't realize how big of a deal it was in Buffalo relative to other places. So it's, really an honor to kind of talk about this family tradition within the context of the book too, and to really honor the work that my grandfather and his co-founders did so many years ago.
My next question for you is, well, to start off, this is something that I don't usually do on E-Train Talks. Usually I just talk with the authors, ask them questions, blah, blah, blah. But today, it is Juneteenth after all, so I thought, what better way to celebrate the holiday than not just an interview, but also a brief read aloud of the Juneteenth story. So, would you mind reading your favorite part of the Juneteenth story of your book?
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. So I'm going to read from the page where it's kind of the turning point when Juneteenth happens. Now, there's just so much emotion that's tied into this page, but I'll just give it a start. All right. So the Confederacy surrendered to the Union on April 9th, 1865. But it wasn't until June 19th that Union General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas. The war now over, he declared his General Order Number 3 from a balcony. Now I do my general voice. The people of Texas are informed that, in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. So 900 days after the Emancipation Proclamation, 89 years after Independence Day, and 339 years after the first enslaved Africans came to the land that is now America, the secret was finally out. Freedom now belongs to enslaved people too. Not to show the
Wow.
yeah.
You were right. There is so much emotion tied to that story. And well, just that page and the story as well. It's so powerful. And also, you do a very good General Granger impression. I didn't meet him
Thank
personally,
you.
but you know.
I haven't either, but I'm just gathering. He could have been a
Yeah.
soprano for all I know, but I was just like, let me just do my general
Yeah.
voice. Yeah. And the
My next,
special thing I like, oh,
no, no,
I
you
just want to share,
yeah.
throughout the book, there's a little girl and her grandparents, and it's like, surprise, surprise, that those books were inspired by me and my grandparents. So,
That's so sweet.
yeah.
My next question for you is, so kind of moving, I mean, we're still going to talk a bit more about the Juneteenth story later, but you also
Mhm.
have other books that you've written too. And
Yeah.
one in particular that I read and loved, I don't have it with me, but
Yeah.
I did read it, like, take my word for it. And
You know,
it's a big tune. And it's actually
yes.
written in rhymes. And
Yes.
it's like reading a song in a sense. It's a very fun and unique way to share a story and not really your typical picture book. So how did you go about writing it? Were there any struggles, or did the words kind of flow out of you like a song?
Yeah. No, thank you. And honestly, telling me that it sounds like a song is the biggest compliment that you can give, because frankly, writing a book in rhyme and verse, it's difficult. It's very difficult. And when it seems effortless, that means a lot of work probably went into it. So the book itself was originally inspired by another book I was working on that was in rhyme, and it wasn't quite working out. So I kind of decided to take another approach. And this idea hit me because it was kind of based on some of the stories that my husband would tell about his upbringing in Brooklyn. And oftentimes, honestly, what happens is I get an idea. I'm like, I'm going to go to sleep at 11:15. And then at 11:30, I get an idea for something. And I come up to this room. My husband's like, all right, I'll see you in the morning. I come up to this room and then I hammer it out. And it's not necessarily perfect, but it's not bad at that point. So I remember when I had the idea for a big tune, I wrote it out, and I brought it downstairs the next morning. I read it to my family and they were like, this is pretty good. And it actually wound up being the story that got me agented.
Oh, wow.
However, I still wound up having to do a lot of revision in order to get it to the point that it needed to be. Because the thing is, when you're writing up a story in rhyme, you have to have the right rhythm throughout. You have to have the right stresses on the right words. And you also have to make sure that you're doing, precise rhyme and not near rhyme. A lot of people try to get away with it. And also, forced rhyme is not the best when you're just kind of switching the order of words so that the speech doesn't sound natural just
Mm.
to make the rhyme work. That's not the best. Honestly, I probably sat on my couch trying to refine it. I went back and forth with my agent, getting it into like a really strong place. I was literally tapping on my computer to kind of keep the beat as I went. I later found out that there's a very easy Google metronome that I now use to kind of keep the beat. But I was going back and forth and just trying to make the smallest tweaks to make the rhythm really shine. Because the idea is, if I'm reading this book, or if you're reading this book, or anybody else, that the book still sounds more or less somewhat the same when they're reading it, and that it still has that sing-songy quality. So it is very difficult because you're still trying to make sure that you've got the right rhythm, you've got the right rhyme, but most importantly, that you're telling a coherent story. So it was difficult, but it was definitely very rewarding. And I've got some other stuff that I'm working on in rhyme, and every single time I'm like, I'm not going to rhyme this time. I'm not going to rhyme this time. It's too hard. But I just can't help it. Can't quit it.
And now just saying that you're rhyming because
Yeah.
you're not gonna rhyme this time.
Yes. Look.
It's
It's just
just
in me.
stuck
It's just
with
in
you.
me.
It's in your head. You can't get it out.
Exactly. So I might as well just go with it.
Yeah, might as
Yeah.
well. And continuing with the big tune path, it's such a sweet story, and the themes
Mhm.
of community and music were extremely prevalent in the book. So,
Yeah.
were these two important messages in your household, or I guess your husband's growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and the funny thing is they are in our households now. For me, um, I'm a mother of two young kids, and I think the importance of community and family was something that was instilled in both, my husband and I early on. My family is from both, America and also from the West Indies too. So I have Caribbean heritage there. But the importance of family and gathering and really loving our culture is something that's definitely important for all of us. But also, we work hard, we work very hard, but we also love, to play hard too. So dance and music is something that I always had a lot of, or I was surrounded by when I was a kid, and I know from my husband too. But even now, like our kids, I'm like, you have to be good at spelling and math, but you also know how to bust a wine.
Yeah.
It's like you got to keep both sides of it. So yeah, it's definitely very much built into some of the values that we have personally as well.
Well, that is so wonderful. And kids, you got to know how to spell the word diligent, but you also need to know how to bust a move or two.
Exactly.
It's just a fact of life.
Yes, you got to be balanced. You got to be balanced.
Mhm. You got to
Yeah.
find that balance. My next question for you is again about Big Tune, but it is your newest book and it is an amazing read. So I feel like the storyline kind of portrays the character's sense of pride in their heritage as well, as they're always surrounded by music and they love it and they love their family, love the sense of community. Is pride a message that you're hoping readers take away from not just Big Tune, but also the rest of your stories that you write as well?
Absolutely. I mean, the thing is, with every single story I write with the intentionality of making sure that there are readers out there who see themselves reflected in this book and see their lives validated in some way. Now, that's my core mission. And then of course I like that, other people get a chance to learn about somebody else. But for me, growing up, I didn't have that many books that reflected my family. I certainly didn't see any books that had like Dancehall in them or soca or anything like that. And so now, it's so much fun as I read the book to others or people tell me they've read the book and they're like, I see rice and peas on the table. Like I see the hairstyle I had back in the 1990s. I see myself. Or the most flattering thing is like this little boy, this character Shane, who's the main character in Big Tune. He reminds me so much of my son. He reminds me so much of my kid. And so I really want people to be able to see themselves reflected in it. I want them to see their cultures reflected in it, and I want them to have a sense of pride in the fact that their culture is something that is important enough to be in the pages of a book that's ultimately shared in the world. So yes, ultimately, it's very, very important to me.
Well, I love pride. Well, not just pride, but also pride. I mean, in story.
I mean, it always, yeah.
Yeah, just pride in general. It's so important to embrace your culture and your heritage, and seeing that portrayed on the pages of whether it's middle grade or picture books or any genre or age group. It's just so important to me, specifically as a reader, and all kinds as well. And you can really connect with the characters that way as well and feel like you're there with them.
Yeah, no, that's really important. It's funny. I was listening to, I don't know if it was a podcast or an interview, and somebody was talking about how it's important, even some people might feel like they need to make things a little bit more generalized so that other readers can feel incorporated, but it's actually kind of the opposite. It's like the more specific you can be, when you say that you can pick up on certain nuances that show that you really know what you're talking about, and that other people who know really know, that's when you can really get to people and you get under this and you get in the core of their heart. And that's so important to me.
Well, I'm so glad you add that to your stories. And
Yeah.
you also have one coming out pretty soon, and it's a little golden book, a picture book about a very well-known and powerful public figure in the world of, well, I feel like kind of everything. It's Oprah
Everything.
Winfrey.
Yes. Yes. Right. You get a car. Yes. I'm so excited about this one. I mean, I'm writing a book. I wrote a book about an icon for an iconic book, imprint, golden books. I grew up reading little golden books, and there's, I don't know, 500, 600 or something and counting of them. But it was part of their little golden book biography series, which has everybody from Oprah soon to Taylor Swift. It's, I think, one of the top, selling books in the country. But yeah, I'm very excited about that one. It's a biography of Oprah's life, told, of course, from a very kid-friendly perspective. So,
well, it sounds very, very exciting, and it'll be read for generations. And hopefully people will know generations and generations after us who Oprah is. If they don't, that'd be pretty sad.
It would be. It would be.
It would. So what's the process like getting in contact with Little Golden Books, or did they get in contact with you, and just writing a picture book biography? Because you got to keep it kid friendly for a really young audience.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So there was an opportunity. I was working on a biography about another person at the time, and my agent mentioned that Little Golden Book was building out their biography series some more. And one of the people they were hoping to write a biography about was Oprah, and I just like jumped at the chance because I was like, I'd absolutely be honored to do that. So when you're writing nonfiction, and actually the Juneteenth Story is my first nonfiction foray into nonfiction, so it kind of wet my feet for that. But you want to use a lot of primary sources. So I'd spent a lot of time, watching interviews of Oprah, talking about herself, and speeches that she gave, and reading essays that she wrote in Oprah magazine to really get a feel for the stories that sometimes she might tell more than one time, to understand kind of like what moments were at the crux of who she is. But we're still talking about this from a kid-friendly audience, or a kid audience. So it's definitely important for me to go back to those moments when she was a kid, and to talk about how precocious she was, so that kids can understand that these big public figures once started out as little kids like them. She was reading at 3 years old, and doing recitations at like, 4 and 5. She was amazing. But just to show kids, this woman was a little bit younger than you and she's doing these amazing things, or she was doing things that other kids would do too. And just to kind of help them see, what the possibilities are for them. And then of course it goes into, how she evolves with time. But, even there's, things that maybe might seem more adult, like talking about the paparazzi,
Mhm.
right? And how they would talk about Oprah. But the reality is people understand, or kids understand, when somebody speaks about something in an unkind way and how that's
Mhm.
not good, right? So
Right.
kind of translating it into those kind of words so that they can understand those basic principles and kind of how they did take part in Oprah's life and her development, was important too.
Well, I cannot wait to read your picture book biography because anybody can read a picture book, whether you're an adult or in middle school or you are 3 or 4 years old, because picture books are like stories that will stay with you forever. They're the basis of the foundation of your reading love.
They really are, and they're certainly the foundation of mine. I mean, it's
Mhm.
amazing. My son is in kindergarten, and even he's, of course, an emerging reader, and his reading has developed so much during the year. But just to even see him, reading the pictures in a book, for some of the best books, you don't necessarily need, the words. I mean, of course, you need the words to kind of, the words guided the illustrations in the first place, but the illustrations also carry the story really well too. And he would reading Big Tune, for instance, but just by using the pictures, and that was just amazing to see.
So, I guess this is a bit of a follow-up. So, just out of curiosity, have you met Oprah Winfrey and what inspired you to write about her journey?
Yeah, no, unfortunately, I have not met Oprah
Oh.
Winfrey yet. It's funny, actually, the day that I wound up turning in like the final version of my manuscript, I was at an event and Gail King happened to be there. I didn't speak to her, but she was like not that far away from me. I said, "Oh, there's Oprah vibes in here," Oprah Jason vibes.
Yeah.
But no, I have not yet met her. But I just think that her story is one that's just worth telling, over and over
Mm.
again. Of course, everybody my age knew who Oprah was because we'd see her on TV. But even as I talk, to kids now, and when I'm doing school visits, a lot of them raise their hands when I ask if they know who Oprah is, but everybody doesn't. And I'm like, this woman needs to be known. I mean, where she came from to where to the level of influence she developed. It's just amazing. I mean, you can say that she is probably a big part of the reason why Barack Obama was our president, and not once but twice. So I think that her story, I just thought that her story is one that really needed to be told. And it was just such an honor to even be able to be the one that could tell it for the Little Golden Book series. So it was just a no-brainer for me. I just admire her so much, as a businesswoman, and as somebody who really knows how to make people feel seen and feel special, because that's certainly something that I try to do, through the work that I do as well.
My next question is about yet another book that you have coming out soon. You have a lot.
Yeah, I
And
do.
and I bet you have more in the works
I
already.
do. I do. I do.
So, bringing our focus back to Juneteenth a little bit, I found out that you actually have another book in the works, and it's a Juneteenth celebration cookbook. It's scheduled to
Yeah.
come out next year, so we have to wait another year, which is always disappointing when you're an avid reader and just a reader who wants to learn more about a certain topic. But gotta wait. Publishing has to do its thing. So, can you tell us about the cookbook and maybe what your favorite recipe in it is and why?
Yeah, sure. So a Juneteenth celebration cookbook is coming out next spring, so in time for the Juneteenth holiday for 2024, and it's a cookbook plus. So
Ooh.
it has drinks and appetizers and desserts, of course entrees, and
Mhm.
some good sides that are really kind of iconic for barbecues, and some that are kind of a little bit of a creative spin. It has things that are more traditional Juneteenth foods in it, like your red velvet types of, there's a twist on red velvet. There's a red velvet ice cream sandwich, which is super delicious.
Ooh.
Even the cookies alone are so good. Um, but it also has some activities that you can do. So it has a couple of crafts that kids and their families can make together. It has some suggestions for field trips that you can do both in person and virtually, so you can learn about the history of Juneteenth. It also has some games that you can play that are tied into, Juneteenth history and just, fun for the holiday. But also, like one of my favorite parts, I love music, as you can probably tell from Big Tune, and I like to make playlists too. So I have How to Be a Cookout DJ 101, and I have some suggested songs for the different moments in a cookout to maybe get people to dance. Because at cookouts, oftentimes people, are sitting around talking, eating, which is
Mm.
cool, but it's like if you want to make it more of a party, here's some fun songs to play. And because I'm, a little bit older, I have a lot of stuff that's from like the 90s,
Mm.
or maybe early 2000s, and a couple from recently. So it's really a multidimensional book. It's going to be a lot of fun. But my favorite recipes, there's so many good ones in there. So I, kind of came up with the ideas for the recipes and worked and with a recipe developer who is a culinary expert, a woman named Chef Taffy Elrod, who's
Wow.
incredible and so talented. So my favorite one is actually my grandmother's potato salad recipe, which is in there. So this is a Price family heirloom that we did share, and it's the one I grew up the one I grew up on, and it was scrumptious. It's always like served in the same bowl, and we actually pay homage to that bowl in the book itself. But it has a lot of sentimental, ties for me.
Mhm.
But there's so many good ones, and some of the recipes might require like a little bit of help for kids, but there's some that they can totally do on their own. So I'm excited for people to have access to the book and the activities and the recipes in it. Of course, it'll be perfect for Juneteenth, but honestly, anything after that too.
So my
What did you
final
think, Mitch?
question for you is one that I've asked every person I've interviewed on my podcast. So if you could be, or if you could meet any literary character, and what I mean by literary character is it could be your favorite author or your favorite character that appeared in a story, non-fictional or fictional. So
Mhm.
now, who would it be and why? You can meet them or be them.
Yeah, let's see. So I think I would want, so my favorite book when I was a kid was probably Matilda. I
That's a
love
great
Matilda so much. So I think I would want to meet Matilda because she just seems so kind and so smart, although her family was absolutely dreadful. But
Yeah.
I think I'd want to meet Matilda and just have a conversation with her and hang out with her for the day because she was just such an icon to me
Mhm.
when I was younger. And honestly, like you were saying, picture books and kidlit is really the foundation for building a lifelong love of reading. And I certainly attribute that book as well as some others to the reason why I'm here today.
Well, I would also love to meet Matilda, and maybe not at her house, rather like at the
Mhm.
library where she
Or the
hangs out.
garden. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, so when she says, "Hey, come home with me," I'll be like, I'll see you tomorrow."
Yeah, exactly. Like we could meet at the library or the garden or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, your family's the worst.
Yeah, no offense.
Yeah, I know. Exactly.
So, thank you so much, Alliah, for joining me today. And actually, while that would be my last question of the interview, I do have something else I'd like to ask. So, while we're recording this before Juneteenth, I can ask, what will you be doing on this Juneteenth, June 19th, 2023?
Yeah, so I'll actually be going to, so fortunately, there are a number of different Juneteenth celebrations in my community. So I'll be going to one that's just a few blocks away from my own house, and I'll be reading the Juneteenth story there. And
Oh,
then actually,
wow.
my daughter's chorus will be performing too, so that'll be nice. But then I also have, some other things throughout the weekend and barbecues and things like that too. So
That's like a lot.
unfortunately, it will be. Unfortunately, I won't be in Buffalo this year, which I was looking at some pictures and I was a little bummed. But hopefully we'll see next year.
There's always next year. So,
Exactly.
well, it sounds like so much fun. And I wish I could be out there. And although I will look for a Juneteenth celebration in Sacramento, that would be pretty
Um,
fun.
yeah, I'm sure there is one. There should be one. There are a lot of Texans actually migrated to California, so there are a
Wow.
number of Juneteenth celebrations out there. Yeah.
Well, I'll be looking on Eventbrite or whatever my mom uses and has an account on.
Okay. All right. That
So
sounds good.
this interview has been so inspiring and interesting as well. And I'm sure everybody watching and listening will agree that you are a pretty outstanding and amazing person. So thank you so much for joining us on E-Train Talks.
As are you, E-Train. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. And have a wonderful Juneteenth to you and to everybody who tuned in. Big tuned in, I guess.
See what you did there.
I had to add that pun.
Yeah, I know, right? It was just right there. It's easy.
It
Yeah, no, I
was.
love it. Yeah, I love it. All right, thank you, and happy Juneteenth,
Happy
everybody.
Juneteenth. Stay safe, keep reading, and I'll see everybody in the next one. Bye.
Bye.